Hey everyone, welcome back to the Beauty School Bobbi podcast. Today I am so excited to release this episode with Corey Gray. Corey is the host of the Your Day Off podcast. So it is an industry podcast that has been around for a while. So I was really excited to get the opportunity to collaborate. Corey and I have met so many times in passing, and the message every single time that we see each other is like, we've got to figure out a time to connect. We need to figure out a time to record together. And so after the last time that we saw each other, which was about a month ago at the Beauty Gives Back event in Chicago, we officially decided that we had to schedule a time to do this. Now, during that time, Corey and I have actually had the opportunity to get to know each other a little bit better on a more personal level. And so we have been just kind of texting about where we are at in our lives and our beliefs, and just somebody that when you meet, you're immediately like, wait, why are we connected in this way? What is this, feeling, or what is there for us to work on together? What do we need to be talking about? And so I am so excited to share this episode. So it's a long one. So not only is it long, but it's a little bit of different content than we typically put out. So it's content that I am listening to on other shows. Corey and I today jumped into a trip that he took with Hair Aid to Cambodia. And so when we were together, we were talking about this experience, and he was just telling me the ways that it changed him in a big way. And we were able to dive deep into that and to talk about what it means for his life now and what he's been able to do. I think one of my favorite things, and thankfully Mark was jotting down notes, because I feel like there are things that I'm even forgetting that I know when we go back and rewatch and re-listen, I'm going to be taking notes on as well. But I think one of the messages that I was so excited to talk about just, was this idea of how in the beauty industry, part of the spiel is, this career path, this industry can take you all over the world, right? And I think when I think of that, or when people in the beauty industry think of that, it's, man, this brand has paid for you to be everywhere, to be on a stage across the world, and all of those things. And what Corey did was different. And he definitely had a moment, he said, where he was like, I can't believe that I'm here doing this, and it is all because of the beauty industry, or this trade that I've, decided to follow. And again, there's so much content there about how to live life, how to be the people that we want to be. So weirdly, it is a topic that, like I said, Mark and I talk about really frequently, and it's something that we've identified and are working on a way to share this more publicly. But being able to do it with Corey today was really, really awesome. So I hope that you love this episode as much as I do. There was definitely a point where we were like, okay, like, we can just talk about this forever. There is so much there, and it is more of a dense conversation than maybe what we are usually doing. But it is one that I think is so valuable, and it's just really, really sound advice. And so I hope that you love it. And if you do, send us some messages. I want to hear your thoughts about the episode and the things that you've taken away from this as well. So it's a good one. I hope you enjoy it, and make sure you follow us on Beauty and Style Network. Make sure that you are following along at Beauty School Bobbi on YouTube, wherever you are listening to podcasts. Make sure you're following there so that you don't miss an episode. So you're notified when new episodes are coming out. So you make sure that you are hearing all of the amazing things that we are sharing and talking about. So thank you all so much for listening. Thank you for being here, and enjoy. You didn't do the Wayne's World thing.
Oh, I don't know the Wayne's World thing.
Where they go like 5, 4, and then he does like a spin, and it's really good.
I would have totally pulled my studio off the table if I tried to spin.
I thought you were going to spin, not knowing that you were
Oh,
connected.
I was about to.
Okay,
That
so
definitely would have been
super
the
fun
best way to
start to
kind
the
of like.
podcast. This is like the most us way to start a podcast. So, first of all, I'm here today with Corey Gray from the Your Day Off podcast. I am so excited to have you here and really excited to interview you because this might be the easiest interview of all time, knowing that you understand how to have a conversation virtually. It's real great.
Well, that's a really heavy preface to start the podcast with, but hopefully we'll get there.
Well, first of all, I love the Samvia hat. You have acknowledged that today is actually Samvia's birthday. You did something so sweet and sent him a song. So we've already like had a dance party, talked about how great Sam is, talked about Wayne's World, Beetlejuice. Like we're great. We're already like, I don't even know what else we have to talk about.
I mean, honestly, we probably should have recorded that and we'd have been done by now.
Thank you so much for being here. I know we have tried to connect and get together. Our worlds are seriously colliding constantly, but when we are together or at an event together, it's always so busy. So I'm so thankful that we finally got to do this. I have so much that I want to talk to you about today.
Well, there's so much I want to talk to you about as well. However, I do want to say, Bobbi, I have such crazy respect for you. Like I love anybody in the industry that's kind of doing things their own way. And whether that's the truth or whether that's not the truth, it certainly feels that way. I love the way that you navigate. I love the way that you show up all the time. And Mark's not bad either. Mark's a pretty good dude too, but it's always such a pleasure when we get to spend, even if it's just like 2 minutes together. And me, you, and Mark get to chat a little bit. I find those conversations sacred, and I really, really appreciate even the little bit of time that we get to hang out. But it's usually like a drive-by, slap five, and a half hug or something. But
it's always so fast. But it means the world for you to say that. This industry, I think, truly has accepted me for who I am. And I think that it is the only space and probably the reason that I just like dove in so much, but like where I really can get to be myself. And I really can show up and just be like, oh, this is just me. This is just us. This is how we are. And I feel like in other parts of my life, there are times that you have to kind of fit into that box, which is normal, but I think in this industry, it really like allows you to be yourself, but also same to you, like you show up as you are, which allows, I feel like if I feel like someone's trying or somebody's whatever, it's hard. I can feel myself kind of try to shape shift. But when there's people that you're just like, oh, hey, like, this is just us. We can talk about anything. Like, it just really allows me to be who I am, too. So I really appreciate you saying that and being who you are, like I said.
Thank you, friend. Thank you very much. It reminds me of a story like in 2021, I was at Hair Love Retreat with Elizabeth Faye. And, we were spending, I think it was like 5 days together or something. And it was really cool. And Tony and I talked about this when we were there. Like if we started this podcast like when I was 30, like it would have been a different thing, and it was so nice that like since we've started this podcast, I've only shown up as me, for good, for bad, or for different. And it was so nice. Like for those 5 days, it would have been exhausting if I was playing a person that I wasn't. And it was so nice just to be able to show up just as me, because that's just the way that people know me, and that it was just really nice that, and I could actually enjoy the time there because I didn't feel like I had to, like you said, shapeshift, just this is me, love me or hate me or whatever. It's just who I am. And I'm so grateful that I'm at the time of my life where I feel comfortable enough in that.
Yeah. Well, I want to dive into that. You and I have a lot to talk about as far as where the beauty industry is taking you. Something that I don't know, and I'm happy that I don't know the story, but I want to briefly, before we talk about what you've been doing in this place that you're in right now, because that really is like what I want to dive into with you. I want to know your story about how you started in the beauty industry. Like, when did this all start? And then how did we get to where we are today, in a summary?
Oh boy, I'm not very good at summary, but we'll get into it anyways. I wanted to get into the hair industry in high school, but I was in high school in the late 80s, and a couple things happened. Is one, I told a friend that I wanted to do it, and he's like, "Oh, you suck with your hands. You can't do hair." So like, at 17 or 18 years old, that's kind of in your head a little bit, like, "Oh, well, maybe I suck with my hands and I can't do hair." And I was also, again, being the late 80s and being a heterosexual guy, like I didn't want everyone to think I was gay. Why would I want everyone to think I was gay? I mean, if you know me now, I could care less, even care less than less about any of that. So what I did is I actually went in the military. So I was in the military for 4 years. And then I was in the original Gulf War, and I spent the last 10, not last 10 months, but I spent 10 months in Saudi Arabia. And then
Wait, what? Like, what branch of the military were you in?
I was in the Navy, so we were deployed to the Red Sea area. We're between the Mediterranean and the Red Sea, but I spent a lot of time in the Red Sea, and because of the type of ship that I was on, we were in and out of Saudi Arabia. For monthly essentially, and then I was a medic in the military. So as the war was, this is pre-war. They actually made an announcement. I don't know if you remember, but they were like January 16th was kind of when the war was going to start. I can't tell you, like, when you're over there, as that date gets closer and closer, the anxiety of how it, like, everyone's anxiety ramped up. And then I got moved off of the ship, and I worked in a hospital center
Wow.
for a few months in Saudi Arabia. It was just like, it's like, you remember the TV show MASH?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So we were one triage station past MASH. So what happens is your original triage center is like a medic is going to like assess you on the field, and then from there you're flown off out of the battlefield into like a MASH unit from the TV show MASH, right? So that's immediate care. I was one
Yeah.
past that. So the center that or the hospital center that I worked at was the like people that had to go home, or the people that needed more long-term care. Like we could hold them for like 6 weeks. I don't quote me on the numbers because I don't remember, but we could hold them for like 6 weeks, and we could like rehab them for 6 weeks. But if there's anything more than that, or if you had to be medevaced out, you came to us and we kind of stabilized you as we were
But
kind of
that's
like an
important to
ambulance
know
service.
about you. Like, for like, how old? I mean, 18, 19, 20. I mean, you're a young man, and that's how it, like, life started for you.
Yeah, exactly. And then
Crazy.
and then literally the day after I got out of the military, I started hair school. I went to the Graham
Okay.
Webb Academy in Arlington, Virginia. Yeah, I mean, it was, over those 4 years, there's a lot of growth there. And there certainly was, like, I honestly, I kind of stopped caring about whether I could use my hands or whether anyone thought I was gay. None of that mattered anymore.
Yeah.
And then, so yeah, I joined hair school. And I convinced two of my buddies to go with me, Tony, who used to be on the podcast, and then our friend Will. I think we kidnapped him, though. We kidnapped Will and made him start hair school with us. But yeah, the three of us did hair there. So I've been on hair for a little bit over 30 years. I was
Mhm.
in and out of a few hair salons. Actually, I've worked in 1, 2, 3 hair salons, and now I've been in a suite since almost 10 years now, I guess, 2016. But
Okay.
I've been in a suite
Awesome.
there. Yeah.
And
So
started the podcast. You're like one of the first industry podcasts, if not the first. Um, and how did that start? Were you listening to other podcasts? Like, what was it? Were you
big
guys
fan
just
of
like, we're
podcasts,
fun?
big fan
Okay.
of the audio format. Even growing up on like Stern, and like we have another local DJ there. Like I liked like the talk format, and then podcast became the talk format. And I
Mhm.
started listening to podcasts super early on, like 2008, 2009. Um, Mark Maron or Rogan or whatever, wherever we could hear a conversation. Just a huge fan of that. And
Mhm.
then I was trying to figure out, like, how can we do this within the hair industry? But up to that point, all the education that we got was either angles or colors or whatever. And I was like, I can't figure out how to make this interesting for more than one episode.
Mhm.
Like, who wants to talk about angles? Like, and how do you talk about angles in an audio format? Certainly it's video now, but for so long it was just an audio format. So I couldn't figure out quite how to have those conversations or what that conversation would be. I knew that I wanted it to be within the industry. I knew that it was my give back to the industry in a sense, or I was hoping it could be. And then what happened is, I can't tell the story without name dropping, so I apologize. But there's this great Los Angeles hairdresser named Philip Wolf, and Philip, when he started his career, he started in the salon that we worked at here in DC. Before he moved to LA and became the Philip Wolf. But long story short, Philip in 2017 called me on a Friday night. He's like, "Hey, I'm going to be in town on Monday. I'd love to see you." So I went down to visit him. And Bobbi, all day long, people were handing me their phones and saying, "Will you take a picture with me and Phil? Will you take a picture with me and Phil?" And so, like, I was his photographer for the day, right? But when I left that event, I knew it. Like I go, that's what I want to talk about. I go, people care about the people in the industry, or certainly like in those days in 2017, like the influences of the industry. So
Mm-hmm.
I went to Tony, my best bud, and I said, listen, man, I want to start a podcast. I kind of like, I positioned it as like, I want to be the Jimmy Fallon of the hair industry. Like I want to introduce people to, like hairdressers that work behind the chair,
Yeah.
all week. I want to introduce them to the people that they see on and tell those stories and all that stuff. And Tony said, and wisely so, he said, if we're going to do this, we have to bring heart to that conversation. And so literally before the podcast started, it changed. And because he was absolutely right. Like if we're going to have these conversations, let's have the conversation, let's not just, pump somebody up, like Fallon does. Let's actually have the conversation. So that was it. Then we just started doing the podcast. We were the first podcast that was hairdresser to hairdresser. Gordon Miller had his podcast out. Gordon was, he very much, was promoting the brands in the industry,
Mm-hmm.
and then there was Eric Taylor was the only other one that I was aware of. And Eric, he's got he owns Salon Republic in California. So, he had 1,000 chairs to fill. So, that was kind of more his focus, for his podcast. But then ours was just like, we're just a bunch of knucklehead hairdressers that work behind the chair. What does this conversation sound like? And that became the premise of the podcast,
I
essentially. We
love
just
that. I
hairdressers and
think it's
hairdressers.
so great too. And like for your, again, just kind of pioneering this and thinking like, hey, they do this in other ways. Why can't we do this for the hair industry? Why can't we have our, I love that. And I think that obviously like it's opened the doors for so many things. You were obviously ahead of your time for where this is going now, where like everyone has a podcast and
Mhm.
everyone's doing it a little bit different. I think it's really cool to know that you all had this idea to do something different in the industry and we're able to to do that and to grow the audience. I think that the information that we can share about the beauty industry for the people that are not in it is the best thing. I think that there's so many people, I always say that I want to like scream from the rooftops about, and so I think being able to do that is awesome, and you highlighting the good, but also the real. I think that's what's fun is you probably have more of a confidence than most about being able to speak your mind and being able to say, and not in like a negative way, but like
Mhm.
just really being open. And I think that's important. Also, we don't need another just like BS podcast. Like we need someone that's going to be honest and really talk to people in like a real way.
Well, I don't want to confuse real with rude, and I think so
Yeah.
often, I think so often in the industry we do that.
Hmm.
It's even the boundary talk, to be honest. Like boundaries is a reason to be rude, and I am not in the space where I want to share anything but positive. It's honestly
Hmm.
the space that I want to live in. I'm a huge. Here's what I know, Bobby, and I know you and Mark know this, is that your life is going to be directly your life in 5 years is going to be the direct result of what you consume and who you hang out with. And there's no
Yes.
doubt, this has been proven time and time and time again in my life. So I want to be one of those people, one of those positive people that you can hang out with and hopefully make your life a little bit better.
Hmm.
I am very, very careful about what I consume. I don't consume anything that gives me the ick at all. Even if it's the ick is the positive ick, meaning like, oh my God, she's such a disaster. That was fun. Like that to me, like it's his highlight of this conversation, of those feelings. But then I also feel like it casts a long shadow, and that long
Hmm.
shadow can be negative. I don't want to be in that headspace. I don't want to be in
Yeah.
the headspace of all that. And that took a lot, like certainly with social and stuff, what you consume, it's hard to avoid that kind of stuff. But I'm trying real hard not to consume anything that gives me the ick at all. I don't do politics. About 2 years ago or so, I made a commitment to myself that I'm not going to consume anything that I don't have. Not consume. I'm not good. Well, we'll say it that way. I'm not going to consume anything that I don't have, that I don't control the outcome of. So if
Mm.
I don't control the outcome, like I don't want to be connected to it at all. Now
Yeah.
what's happened with that, and this was not the intent, and you guys are down there in Knoxville, so you won't understand this at all. However, like I watch sports differently now. Like I don't watch sports with fandom. I watch sports almost as ballet. I watch it as
Mm.
art. I get to see like the true athleticism of like of like in the NFL. I get to see like the true athleticism of the players as opposed to like that guy's hurting my team or that guy's doing good for my team. Like that, I'm disconnected. That was not the intent, by the way, but that's just kind of once you start to shift your mindset about that,
Hmm.
it's impossible not to kind of, for me, it was impossible
No,
not.
that's so interesting. And it seems like it makes sense that that would be the outcome. Like, especially when you're trying to stop seeing like separation. I think also is just seeing like, things for exactly, how they are and looking at things in a different way. I love that. I think that that's awesome. I wouldn't have guessed that that's where, that would have led. I can't even imagine like getting to that place. Like, I'm so hardcore about Pittsburgh teams and about my city, but that's pride, right? Like that is just that's seriously just like proud of being where I'm from, proud of my family having this identity in this thing. But I think no, it's a really interesting way to think about it. And I really like that you brought that up. I wanna spend some time on that for sure.
Well, I definitely, I want to be, maybe here's a way to think about it. I want to be connected with me and I want to be
Mm-hmm.
less connected with stuff or
Ooh,
things,
yes.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Like me being connected with me is the most important thing that I can do. With that, I don't consume. If it doesn't serve me, I don't consume.
You
You
know
know,
what's crazy about that though? Well, and I've only like, we've only been really close for like a few months. But what I do know about you is you're extremely creative and you are creating so much. Has that always been the case? Or now that you've, instead of consuming, you're like putting stuff out there? Was that a shift? Like you have done so much. You literally, like, even just today, like created and the song and the whatever, like we come on and that's what you're doing. Like I love that like, is that the shift that happened or has that always been?
well, I mean, listen, I mean, we can specifically talk about AI, which I'm such a huge fan of. I actually did a podcast with Ruth Roche, who's one of the most creative, talented people in the world. I
Yeah.
don't think that there's any question about that. In the podcast, during the podcast that we had, is that what AI's allowed me to do is it's allowed me to be creative. It's also allowed me to understand that I'm way more creative than talent, and like AI becomes my talent. And so what that's done, I actually think it's been great for my own mental health. Because yes, I've always been creative and I've always thought of like ideas or thoughts or whatever, but just had no outlet. So then what do you do with that energy? Now you're just like, you're festering in that energy and I wish I could get it out. Well, AI allows me to just kind of do that. And by the way, creativity and here's what I'm learning is that creativity, 90% of it is shit. But it's the 10% that's magic. But you've got to like kind of like filter through that 90% before you get to the real magic. And like I said, AI allows me to kind of do that and just to get stuff out of my head, out of my way, out of my space. And I honestly, I do think that that's had a lot to do with like, um, just me feeling better about my own mental health,
Yeah.
is having a place for it and to just explore. AI
Yeah.
allows me to explore, and it's personal exploration. Like I'm only sharing with you, it's like Instagram. I'm only sharing with you what I want to share with you. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? But there's a lot of stuff that isn't that great on there. But, even on that note, maybe I'm going back a couple years, but even when people were like, "Oh, social media is just it's like the highlight reel." I'm like, I just want to see your highlight reel. Like
Totally.
I've got enough crap in my own life that I have to navigate through. I don't want to navigate through yours either. Like, show me the highlight reel.
Hmm.
Show me your dinner. I want to see what you ate. I want to live vicariously through you. I don't need, once again, it comes down to consumption. I don't need to consume, Bobby's bad day in her marriage. You know what I mean? I've
Yeah,
got bad days in my marriage. I don't need to consume yours as well, So yeah,
for sure.
again, I'm probably rambling now, but that's kind of,
No, it's so
it's so
true. And I
important to me.
think the message of what you're taking in is so, so, so important. I think it's going to be an even bigger conversation. I think that, I really think that we're going to shift from sharing, like you said, like the bad stuff. I think that it's going to go to a place where, and maybe it's just because our kids are growing up being like so photographed, so videoed, so all the things. I really think that they're going to take more of a, like, we don't post at all. Like, what are you doing? We're not going to post our private life. Like I really feel like there's going to be that shift where it's not so much of the personal, and like it's some stuff is left for us. Like I feel like that's probably part of your, I'm not going to consume as much. I really feel like we're going to see more of that. I mean, I think with burnout, with whatever, it's yeah, how much can we actually take in? It really affects us. I think a lot of people in this industry specifically who carry a lot anyways, and after work, like you've heard all the stories and you've done like you're tired, like there's only so much you can handle too, which brings me back to why I made Mark like push record when we were talking before, because you had actually shared, you said that you are in a place right now, it's like the best that you've, ever been, and you're doing so great mentally. And I want to talk about what that is. And when I asked you why, you said it was Nepal. And so I want to talk about how this industry, which makes sense now, knowing kind of how you started and what your life was like prior to coming into the industry. But you clearly are someone who has seen parts of the world and has traveled. But I think what just happened in the trip that you were just on really changed you. And so I want to talk about the way that the industry opened up a door for you to go and do good and literally like change your life. So with Hair Aid,
Mhm.
correct? You
Yeah,
were
Harry.
able to go to Nepal. So tell
It
me
was,
about that organization.
I'll tell you about Harry, but it was Cambodia, not
Oh, Cambodia. That's
Nepal.
right. Yes.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, listen, Hair Aid was amazing. It was an amazing trip. I'm so incredibly grateful that I was able to take part in that. I learned about it. Once again, can't tell the story without name dropping, but we had Tabitha Coffee on the podcast in 2019, and Tabitha was telling us how it was her passion project, and we were actually supposed to go with Tabitha in 2021, but as we know, nobody was traveling to Southeast Asia in 2021.
Mhm.
So it didn't happen, but I was able to do it, this past July. So July 2025, I was able to go to Cambodia for Hair Aid. I was there for 18 days. When I was there was one other American. There was a woman from Canada, a woman from England, and another woman from Dubai. And everybody else that was there was from Australia. It's an Australian NGO. So I was just, again, just honored that I could go. I definitely encourage more and more, certainly Americans, to go, because I think that it's really, like you said, it's life changing. It's life changing on so many levels. Now, that being said, I am so glad that I didn't go in 2021, because I think the trip I was supposed to go on is the trip that I went on, and that was in 2025. I was 4 years more mature. I was a couple years into my practice of not being connected to things that I don't control, and all of that helped while I was there. It was able to. I've been really like focused on with that with that connection is I've been really focused on my own ego and where it lies in my life, and does it serve me? Is this a moment where my ego is serving me, or is this a moment when my ego isn't serving me? As you get older, I think our ego serves us less and less and less. I think it gets in the way of where real magic lies. And so again, by going, when I went to Cambodia, I was able to, it was really nice that I was in a different life. I was a different person when I went there. And in the sense that, like, it wasn't my day to day. It wasn't like what I have to do today. It was just, I could go there. And I was in true service while I was there. A
What
few
was
months.
it like, I wanna know where you were. I know you said you were kind of started on this journey. I wanna know what Corey was like the day before you left. I mean, were you nervous? Were you like, did you just have a feeling of calm knowing that this is where you were supposed to go? This was gonna be like, did you kind of know that this was gonna be something big for you?
I wanted it to be something big for me.
Mhm.
It was top of mind that this was an opportunity. Not only was it an opportunity to serve, which is what Hair Aid is, but it was also an opportunity to serve myself. Never traveling by myself before, never being to Southeast Asia before. These are all big things. Was I nervous? Absolutely. Was I scared? Absolutely not. I was encouraged about the trip and excited for the trip, but I was absolutely nervous about it, as you do,
Mhm.
like when you start a new job. It was kind of that feeling, I guess, is like, you're walking into the unknown, and your eyes are just kind of open about, like, how am I going to navigate this, but also willing to do so. It's like I
What
said.
was the goal of you going as far as like with Hair Aid? So when you show up there, what in your mind, right? Like when before you left, what was that gonna look like? What
Well,
was
let
the
me
service side
Well,
gonna look like for
let me,
you?
yeah, let me explain what Hair Aid is. Hair Aid is a project where we teach hair cutting skills to people that are in critical poverty, and it's like third world critical poverty, which certainly in Cambodia's case, it means that illiteracy rate is really really high. A little 2-second history of Cambodia is that they had a genocide from 1975 to 1979. And some of the people that were killed were all the teachers, all the lawyers, all the monks, anybody that looked like establishment lost their lives during the genocide. And what that means is that certainly when it comes to education, which why we were there, we were training people haircutting skills. You can't just flip the light switch on and say, "Oh, we have education now," because you totally you killed that generation of literally killed that generation of educators. So there's it's slow to kind of get up, and they were also in a civil war for years, and they've only had an established government since 1998. Now, as great as education is, and as great as education we think, but when you're rebuilding a country after 30 years of hell, education isn't the top of the list. You know what I mean? As far as like priority, there's a lot of other
Mhm.
priority about industry and bringing money in and creating a tax base and stuff like that. In order to have education, so I don't know where I was going with that, but so we got to train people who live in critical poverty, and it was pretty, and that was the goal, and that was like okay, well, we can make a difference here, we can show up and make a difference. So that's what Hair Aid does. It definitely, I while I was there, I've cried more than I think I've cried my entire adult life combined, mainly with gratitude, but also with like the reality of it, and not to like, it's not about being humbled. Like humble is an easy word to say, but those weren't the feelings I had. It wasn't like, oh, I feel so humbled. It was just, I was just more gratitude and grateful than anything. I used to have
Mhm.
a gratitude practice where like, every night I would do, oh, what am I grateful for? Every morning, what am I grateful for? What I learned there is that if you live in gratitude, you don't need a practice. You just are.
Mhm. Yes. I love that. I think that's so amazing and for that to be reaffirmed, um, while you're there and while you're helping, like, what a gift. Like, you coming back changed, but it being, like, in gratitude is everything, Corey. Like, I really feel like that's I hate to be like the secret to success because I think there's so many things that
Mhm.
have to lead up to you being the kind of person that can live that way. You have to have experiences. I feel like even finding it at 18 would maybe be I don't know, too soon. I don't know. It's never too soon to do that, but I just know what experience brings and how much more valuable that finding that peace can be when you've lived. So there's part of me that's like, why wouldn't want to take away the lessons and the experiences and all those things to get to this point because you are so much more grateful and appreciative and you see the good in people. I think that's the other thing is I think being able to recognize the good when you see it and meeting other people and being like, wait, you're different. Like, wait, you get it. What is it
Mhm.
about you? Like I think that that's really incredible too. So I think it's awesome that, like you said, you ended up on the trip that you were meant to be on in the place in your life where you were really ready for that experience. So being there 18 days, when you got there, what was that first day like?
Well, the first moment was terrifying. Luckily for me, my dear friend Matthew Fairfax owns a hair salon in Phnom Penh. So Phnom Penh is the capital city of Cambodia. It's the city that I was flying into. So he was just an incredible. He was an incredible resource. He wasn't there when I was there, but he has an American woman that runs his salon named Amber that's there, and Amber was an incredible resource as well. Amber and Matthew, they had a driver named Tony, by coincidence, just Tony.
Oh.
Had a driver by Tony, so they introduced me to Tony. So I had been talking to Tony, the driver, for a couple months before I arrived. And so when you get out of the airport, it's like it's overwhelming. It's you're being not physically attacked, but verbally, like, you need a card, you need this, you need that, whatever you need, you could get there at the airport. And now, mind you, I'd been flying for 25 hours, so I was a little bit like, deer in headlights when I walk out, and then there's all this energy coming at you. Now, I'm going to say it probably lasted 5 seconds, but it seemed like a lot at the moment. And then, like the Red Sea parting, the people parted, and there was Tony, my driver, waiting for me. And it was just like, it was amazing, because immediately, like, you could feel like all the anxiety was gone,
Mm-hmm.
it was just gone. And then, Tony took me to my hotel, and that was, it was just, it was pretty awesome to kind of like, okay, now I'm on the trip that I'm supposed to be on, like all that energy kind of went. So the next morning I woke up, and again, Tony was my driver, so I would DM him and like, hey man, I need a ride. He wasn't always able to get me, but he always had friends that were there. So, it was like friends of Tony would pick me up in like a tuk-tuk or whatever I needed. So I got the very first place that I went, honestly, was Matthew and Amber's salon. They invited me over for morning huddle, so I did morning huddle with them. And it was that was pretty cool. It was pretty magical to be in their salon and just listen. They opened up with like, what'd you do? It was a Tuesday. So what'd you do for the weekend? And then, what are you grateful for? And it was really nice to sit in this gratitude circle, and for whatever reason, it could have been sleep deprivation. It could have been because I was removed. It could have been whatever, but that gratitude circle seemed more genuine than any other ones that I've ever sat in. I never felt like there was competition to be like, oh, I'm going to show you how grateful I am, which sometimes, happens. And it was like basic stuff. I was grateful that I could, spend time with my mom this weekend, and you're like, oh, like, it doesn't have to be the big stuff, like, I'm grateful for world peace, none of us have control over that, but we can be grateful to see our loved ones, so anyways, yeah, so that was, that was really cool, and what a great way to start a trip like this.
Yeah, what was the salon like? What were the differences, or is there a place that you can kind of compare it to, or a salon culture that you can kind of compare it to? Like what does it look like?
I mean,
What does
visually,
it how feel like?
visually, it looked like every hair salon that in any city. I think it was
Mhm.
on like the fourth floor or something, so it was up in a high-rise building. So it wasn't like floor level like that we're accustomed to seeing. I mean, it felt like a normal hair salon. It definitely felt like a normal hair salon where instead of English they speak Khmer, which is the language of Cambodia. So that was cool. Yes, there was definitely English there as well. And there was a woman that worked there that translated, the conversations, but it surprisingly, it felt as just like any other hair salon I'd ever been in. It was really, really nice in that sense. And
That's
it's a high
awesome.
end salon too for Phnom Penh.
Mhm.
The salon is focused on expats. The salon is focused on um regular, I say regular hairdresser, but regular, like what we would consider like a regular hair salon in the US. There's balayage and extensions and all that stuff is going on there.
Okay. So you're starting to feel more comfortable in that setting. Obviously,
Mhm.
there's a few differences as far as, starting the day, which I think is so amazing. Like I would love to implement that practice in the school of starting with gratitude and going around. Like I love that. But you're starting to feel more comfortable. So it takes, I'm sure, a little bit to feel like you're even somewhat back to yourself. But let's talk about the times that, there's been some flips that have switched in your brain, in your heart, in your whatever. What are some of those moments? When did that happen? And how did it, really just affect you? When
Okay.
were you like, whoa?
Well, I think that all of it affects us, right? Like, I think, I think even that gratitude, what a way to start the trip. You're starting in
Hmm.
gratitude before the trip even starts. I mean, to have a practice of gratitude, that's exactly where it starts. It starts before the start. It just is, um, I don't think I can tell the story fully without talking about 2 months before I left for my trip. I had a guy on the podcast named Light Watkins, and Light Watkins is a meditation coach. As a matter of fact, I think he's Meghan Markle's meditation coach. Don't quote me on that, but I think he is. But being a meditation coach, I said, hey, listen, I'm going to Cambodia. He spent a lot of time in Southeast Asia, and he's traveled alone a lot. I'm going to Cambodia. I'm traveling alone. What advice would you give me? And he gave me a very thoughtful, like 10-second pause. And he said, here's the advice I'm going to give you. He goes, you're going to be on two journeys. There's the first journey that you're going on, and that will be the airplane tickets, the hotel reservations, the excursions, all the stuff that you plan. That's the journey that's the first journey you're going on. But the second journey that you're going on, and the second journey shows up in between the plans and often is disguised as stress. But the second journey you're going on, that's the journey that God needs from you. That's the journey that universe needs from you. That's the real journey that you're on. And in those moments, my recommendation is to stay present. So stay present in those in those times that feel stressful. Now, that was a mantra that I had the whole time, is stay present, stay present. Light said to stay present, what I didn't realize was that present is, you're only aware of presence when you're in full surrender. So when you can surrender everything, that's where the real presence is.
Wow.
The
Okay.
Buddha talks about truth. And again, the Buddha talks about truth, and I feel like that truth comes in full surrender. You are exactly where you are right now. And that means you're disconnected from your ego. That means that you're disconnected from anything that you think it should be. It means that you're disconnected from, and certainly being in a third world, it's you're disconnected from any kind of, and I mean this in the best of ways, but any kind of like American arrogance or American, like, oh, I know how this is supposed to go. Like all of that is gone, and when you can kind of release all of that, just release it. Like, I have no opinion about right now, and just be. That to me was where truth lies. And that's why I was saying, I don't think that I could have experienced that truth in my everyday life. Like, I think I had to be not living in, as far as whatever, but I had to be someplace else to be able to explore that. Or
You
that,
had to give up the most control there, right? Because it's not your norm. It's not your everyday. And like you, I mean, you don't have a ton of control in that situation, where you are, what the world is like there, what you're gonna like. Yeah, I mean, it makes sense that that's where you would be able to separate. Crazy to do it. And I just feel like, to me, when I like imagine this, um it feels like a really hard place to do it, because at least for me, I feel, which is probably why it's so important and why it's made such a difference in you, because it was probably the hardest time to do it. But I think for me, I would want any piece of control, like being in a place that's new. And what I would want, it would be my comfort, right? Like you would want to be like, okay, well, at least I'm going to do this meal here. Or I'm going to, what I would be grasping, for sure. Did you feel like that ever? Or
no,
were you, because you knew going into it, like you were just surrender?
no, because that's the practice.
Yeah.
Like, the practice is that surrender. The practice
Mm-hmm.
is when you're having that feel of control, that you let it go. Look, you just took a big sigh. Like, you're having a hard
Yeah.
time even imagining that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like it is giving up that control, and understand that control is just a reaction to your own ego, or it's a reaction to your own upbringing, or it's a reaction to not feeling enough, so
Mm-hmm.
and all those are probably valid reasons, but it's also the opportunity to give that
Yeah.
all up.
In
you know
2021, would you have, I know we talked about the differences of what you were ready for. Do you think you were in any way ready to surrender at that point?
no.
Yeah.
Mm-mm.
Had to be on this trip
Now,
and
I mean,
in
that would
this way.
also, okay, but a couple caveats there, right? Let's pretend COVID didn't happen, right?
Yeah.
Let's pretend that we just lived our life as we were prior to COVID. I mean, I think that COVID, certainly, I think it opened a lot of us up to, a lot more of that kind of thinking. In
Mhm.
2021, again, without COVID, blah blah blah, all the things. No, I definitely wouldn't have been ready. I wouldn't have been ready for it pre-COVID. So I would have to imagine that if we didn't have COVID, then 2021, I would have just been the same person that I was in 2019.
Yeah. So going in with that mindset, having that meditation specialist like on your podcast and being able to have that conversation, setting your intentions prior to doing something really big. I'm sure looking back, you're like, man, I'm happy that this all lined up this way, for you to be prepared and have those resources and tools to be able to do that. How many times were you like, okay, Corey, bring it back? Okay, Corey, bring it back.
Well,
Like,
a
was
million
it?
times. I mean, every day,
Yeah.
right? But you know,
Yeah.
I think what you said is spot on, and what's the intention of the day? And you know, and
Hmm.
every day that I wake up, I try to go, okay, what's my intention for the day? You know, and my
Hmm.
intention for the day, and the intention for the rest of my life is to seek peace. You know, I'm only seeking peace in my life. And like, if we go back to like even where we started about like, you know, controlling things that you can control and forgetting about everything else. I mean, that's just peace seeking. You know, that's all it is.
Hmm.
I'm seeking peace in my life. And, you know, and not to take a shot at you, but even, you know, when you get insecure and now you need to go into like control mode, is that creating peace?
Hmm.
You know?
No.
So,
Yeah.
well, it was rhetorical, but right. So, you know,
Yeah.
you kind
Wait,
of
I'm
have
like,
to,
no, we're not actually doing therapy right now, Corey. Wait, what? I'm like, do we want to just jump in or?
right. I mean, we kind of are. So yeah, well, I mean, let's pick up where we left off in the story, and where we picked up was like I left the salon, that hair salon, and I went to a genocide museum. You know, I mean, that was all about. You know, I spent 3 hours at a genocide museum in Cambodia, and it was in an old high school that they turned into a torture center and prison. You know, the mortality rate there is 98%, and they estimate that between 30 and 40,000 people traveled through that school in 4 years. You know, I mean, that doesn't leave a lot of people, you know, at 98%. So there was a ton of surrender in that. You know, how do you feel about this? You know, what's your opinion about this? What's, you know, all of that you kind of had to give up. Like, you know, this isn't a place for an opinion. This isn't a place for absorption. You know, what I learned that I learned when I was there was that I've always been, my entire life I've been a searcher, and what I realized is that searching is searching for outcome. I like to redefine or reframe myself as a seeker, and all I'm seeking is understanding, and
Hmm.
understanding isn't tied to some prejudiced or preconceived whatever. You know, just seek better knowledge, just seek better whatever. But it's not answers. Searching is you're searching for answers. Seeking is you're seeking understanding, and that was a big aha for me.
What was your interaction like after leaving that museum, right? So you obviously are around other, people in that city.
Mhm.
What changes for you in that moment of how you're showing up for the people that you're meeting and the people that you're helping and just interacting
Let me
with?
well,
What was that like?
let me walk you through the very next day too, and then we'll get there. I promise. Um, well, I'll promise that you'll remind me to get there. So, um, so I did the Genocide Museum. It was heavy, as you can imagine. You know, it's heavy, 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 heavy stuff. You're walking through, you know, this old high school that they turned into a prison. You know, they built prison cells in there. There's still barbed wire fences everywhere. Like it looks as if it did in the 1970s. It's intense. It's intense to know that, you know, the trauma and the drama that went on there is crazy. Um, and it was a torture center. So as they would torture you, once you stopped giving information, you know, then you were sent to your next camp. Well, your next camp was the killing fields, which is which is where you ended up. Um, but even with these tortures, you know, they had like 6-year-olds or 9-year-old kids admitting that they were part of the KGB and stuff. So it's like it's absurd, kind of like, you know, what
Yeah.
the information that they were getting. Like none of it was probably that great because of the way that it was obtained. You know.
Right.
um Now with that, I will say this is that like my phone got down to 6%, you know, and I started thinking, you know, there's no better anxiety in the world than when your phone is under 10%, right? It's the greatest anxiety ever. So I go to the front of the school, and the guy that let me in, I was like, hey man, do you have a plug that I can plug in for a couple minutes? And he looked me in my face and he goes, yo man, we're not rich. And I thought like, what a like amazing, like you're not in Kansas anymore moment, you know, because pretty much anywhere in the US I could ask for a cord and I could get one for a second, you know.
Hmm.
And I was just like, oh, thank you for that. Thank you so, so much for that. It was just like a real like, once again, you're not in Kansas anymore, you know.
Yeah.
And I appreciated that conversation because that was, you know, that was it. And that would happen, you know, within the first couple hours of me being there, really. You
Hmm.
so, but just to be, again, I was thankful for that. Oh, thank you. Thanks for informing me of that. And then, I left there. I went back to the hotel that evening. I had dinner with Amber and her husband, Brandon, and we went to this great vegan restaurant in the alley somewhere. because they're from there, so they're expats that have been there for like 8 years now. So the very next day, because I had such a heavy day before, I decided to lighten the mood. So I went to the Killing Fields. The Killing Fields was absolutely like I'd probably do the Genocide Museum again, but what I wouldn't, I'll never do the Killing Fields again. Like I've done it, I've experienced it, and that's all the experience I possibly need. It's
Mhm.
2 acres, and there's 80,000 bodies buried in 2 acres. It's just mass grave after mass grave after mass grave, including women and children, and just it's heavy, 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 heavy stuff. And while you're there, at the center of the Killing Fields is this tower, and inside the tower is 40,000 skulls. So there's no getting around what happened, right? There's no like rewriting history. There's no whitewashing it. There's no that. It's real. That's it. There's 40,000 skulls there. Um, and just to and a part of that is that a lot of those people should be alive today. It's from 75 to 79. I mean, there was people there that were younger than me, whose
Mhm.
skulls were on display. So that was heavy, and that was real. But
Wait,
super.
I do have a question. Who decided to did somebody tell you to do that? Like, were you just felt like you needed to go see that? Who, like, especially after the museum, like you being like, I'm gonna go I mean, what was that?
Well, I mean, a couple things is I wasn't going to do it. So I was talking to Matthew, the guy that owns Kate Corpy Salon in Phnom Penh. I was talking to him, and I said, I don't think I want to do this. A, because I'm traveling alone. B, because it's heavy stuff. C, because I'm an addict. So alone time is never good for me. Really depressive alone time really isn't good for me. Um,
Mhm.
so I really had no desire. And Matthew said, you have to do it. He said, you'll never understand how resilient the Khmer people are until you visit these things. You have to know. And I can tell you that I'm super grateful for that. I'm glad I experienced that because it allowed me an insight that I wouldn't have otherwise had. For a
Yeah.
couple reasons. But that's actually why we went out to dinner with Amber. Like Amber was like, why don't you go to the Genocide Museum, do that, and then we'll go have dinner. So if you need to process anything, we can process together. So
That's
that's
great.
why, yeah, that's why Brandon, Amber, and I went out to dinner with that.
Mhm.
All that being said, this is the setup. There's very, very few people in their culture that are over 60 years old. It was a complete generation of people that were killed. So when you see someone over 60, you give them an extra nod. You have a better understanding. Nobody in that culture did got away with anything. Like they all were in the camps. So if they're over 60 and they're still alive, that they've lived through it. And that should
Mhm.
only be honored with a big heart. Or they were part of the Khmer Rouge, which was the ruling party at the time. But even still, for me, I kind of have empathy for them too, because there's just once you are a part of that, there was no getting out of it. The only way out
Yeah.
of it was to be in the ground. So
Right.
maybe even more, like even the stuff that you've had to endure, is pretty heavy stuff.
Mhm.
So it allowed me, again, anyone over 60, you're like, you know, just blessings to you, because I know you've lived through it, more so than we could have ever possibly, anything that we've ever experienced.
Mhm.
So it was really nice to kind of to have that understanding. And they are, for the most part, Cambodian people are just the happiest, kindest, sweetest, smiliest people ever. You're always greeted with a smile. I think last year they were like voted like happiest place on earth, or happiest people, or whatever. Which again, I can't. It's not even a generation, or a generation ago or so.
I know.
Certainly within my lifetime, and to see that the country is built with kindness and compassion and smiles and happiness and all of that, just like it kind of blows me away, because again, you can go to Instagram and people are mad about something trivial that went on yesterday.
Right. And so there's that perspective though, but I feel like that's exactly it makes sense to me to hear that because that's how you left, right? Like after seeing all of that, you left with more gratitude and just a happier way. Like I said, I mean, you said that this is like the best that you've been. And I think that obviously something rubbed off on you there. And they are kind of, again, you have two paths, right? Like you can be like, this was our story, and we're, obviously we can't understand or imagine. And especially, everyone listening, I'm sure, has not been and seen what you've seen either. So I think that there's like a difference there, but I think it makes sense to say that, and hopefully light is bringing more light. There's obviously something that's saying, hey, we can't live in this happened, and we need to remember it and honor it and all of those things, but we can't stay there. And I feel like that seems like it is kind of the message.
I think so. I mean, it's a very Buddhist country too, and that's very much a Buddhist belief as well. Is that
Hmm.
basically it is what it is. There's nothing we can do about the past, but we can move forward and we can continue. We can continue to shine light forward, and that was definitely kind of the way that I saw it. It's funny actually is that when I left the killing fields, I got back to my hotel and I had a 10:30 flight the next morning. So my driver Tony was going to pick me up at 7:30 and take me to the airport. And when I got home, when I got back to the hotel, I checked my emails and my flight had been canceled, not delayed, not like what it got canceled. So I and again, this would have stressed me out because I needed to be in C. Not that I needed to be, but the plan was to be in Siem Reap the next day. So I text Tony and I'm like, hey man, guess what? I don't need that flight. I don't need that ride after all. I go, but I need to get to Siem Reap. Do you know any way that I can get to Siem Reap? And he said, give me 20 minutes. And about 10 minutes later, he texts me and he goes, okay, my friend Leong is going to drive you to Siem Reap when we're there. And uh, uh, again, instead of being like, freaked out about like that there's a big change coming, honestly, the very first thought I was like, oh my gosh, I'm actually going to see the countryside of Cambodia. There's no other opportunity to do this. And I only saw that canceling of a flight as opportunity, not as like, oh, feel sorry for me, or it didn't go as I planned, or it wasn't like on the schedule. It was like the immediate thought was like, I get to see the countryside of Cambodia, and what other opportunity would I have to do that? So for the next morning, Leong picked me up and we drove for 6 hours all the way to Siem Reap, and it was just absolutely glorious and beautiful. And I actually got to see the countryside and got to see how real Cambodians lived, not necessarily those that are in a city.
That's awesome.